So how can you tell if your kid's doing drugs? What do you look for?
Probably the first thing I noticed was a change in their friends. When they were younger, all of their friends used to come over to the house, within limits, because I wouldn't allow people here when I wasn't home. But the friends, as they began to use drugs, changed. They had a different attitude, a different way of thinking, a different life. And I saw less and less of the friends. Grades also changed in school. Mood swings were tremendous when they were using drugs. The style of music that they listened to changed. Went from one of pop rock to more heavy metal, loud, real bass kinds of music. Every time I bought Visine, it would always disappear. And of course, nobody knew where it went.
I remember some of the symptoms for pot were you were always thirsty, always hungry, and you had a persistent cough.
With cocaine, you're also really, really thirsty. I also had a runny nose right after I did the coke, but usually by the next morning, my nose would be stopped up.
That's true. There were a lot of runny noses around here, but I just thought they had a cold.
The desire for the drug, once you start using it, becomes more powerful than your desire to love your family. We didn't care about our family. We didn't care about each other. We just cared about getting high.
I really didn't have to worry about money for my drugs because people usually bought them for me. But occasionally, I didn't even know if you knew this or not, but I did steal money from your purse. And once I sold my $200 bike for $35 for some beer.
Most of the time, girls who are using drugs go out with older guys. And I didn't, I don't know if parents know that or not, but all the guys who I went out with when I was 14 and 15 years old were 18 and 19, and that's why I didn't have to pay for any of my drugs, because they had money, they had the drugs. I mean, they wanted, other things from me, but as long as I got my drugs, I didn't care.
But when you begin to see 3 or 4, 5 perhaps symptoms together, you really need to take a look and see if what the kid is doing is getting involved in drugs. I didn't put those signs together because I was into denial. I denied the fact that my kids might use drugs. Denial and saying I should have always imply some guilt in terms of the parents, and I felt very guilty. I should have known. I should have put it together, but I didn't.
Now, you must start talking to your child now. Don't let him pull slowly away from you. Don't wait until you see these signs. Because usually, by the time you see it, when it hits you in the face, your kid will already have a serious drug habit. And if your kid uses drugs, if he starts early and uses them all through his teens, what's going to happen to him?
I've seen tragedies, see them every day in my practice, where kids have gotten off the track at 14 and 15, and then 10 years later, 20 years later, they're still unable to form stable relationship, have any kind of careers, and of course they come right back to the parental home, bringing back their failed marriages, their children, their obligations, their inability to have any kind of careers, and the parents who had the feeling that they were going to just hang on for a few years and then the kids would go away and not be a problem for them are sadly mistaken. Having a child who's drug dependent is a lifelong burden for the parents, not something that lasts only for the teenage years. And that's true for the parents and it's true for the kids.
The flip side to this bleak coin is that there is help for your child, but it has to start with you. So before we go any further, here's something you need to hear.
You have a right to talk to your children about drugs. In fact, you have to. Because if you don't talk to your kid about drugs, they'll get the opposite message. It'll be that whole concept of listen to what I'm not saying. If you don't tell your kids not to do something, they're going to think it's okay.
Maybe you haven't spent enough time with your child. Maybe you're a single parent, you're divorced, you have to work hard, and you haven't been able to do the things you want to. Maybe you feel really guilty about that. Even so, you still have the right to tell your child no. You must lay down the law and say no. Many parents feel that it's very difficult sometimes for them because they take aspirin or they might take a prescription drug too much or smoke or drink. If If that happens in your house, it's going to be harder, but you still have the right to tell your child no.
If you're finding it hard, if you're finding it real hard to be this consistent with your kid, if you're finding it hard to talk to your kid about alcohol or drug use or sex, get some support for yourself. Speak to your best friend. Guaranteed they're having the same anxiety that you are about this. It's okay to come down hard. Your kid isn't going to like you. So what? I mean, do you want to be your child's best friend or do you want to be their parent? It's important for you to make that distinction. Your child needs a parent. If you're not going to be the parent, who's going to parent the kid?
The supreme irony here is that even though your child may view you as the enemy for keeping him away from drugs, you'll really be the best friend he ever had.